really important that we begin to change the mindset of young people to know that your vote counts.
They don't understand that the legislative arm of government is actually a co-equal arm of government.
We have an incredible amount of potential.
Whatever it is I was doing, because of my personal DNA, it had to be of an international standard. Which is what, seriously speaking, is all about.
Hello there. Technically, it's still a new year, but just a few days into the year, and my guest is just a few days into his 80th birthday. So I think we can still say Happy New Year to you. It's 2018, yes, but what's 2018 looking like for you? If you listen to my guest story, you probably recalibrate and wonder, maybe I should visit that hunger for power within me. Power to do what? Well, we'll be talking with my guests about hunger for power and many more. Someone who fell in love with the desert long before he was 30 and has lived the life loving the desert, seeking the desert, and finding mitigation and solutions to the desert. I'll be back with my guests if you don't go away. And again, Happy New Year to you. Well, for this purpose, I have to put on my glasses and read the few notes I've put together about my guest. He's from Delta State, southern Nigeria, from a village called Akuku Igbo. He turned 80 on the 1st of January, and he launched a book that's called Hunger for Power that actually captures the essence of his life. But you may have heard that he's the only African that has crossed the Sahara Desert 3 times, first when he was 28, then when he was 62, and lastly when he was 70. One area that is still to conquer is space. My guest today is Dr. Newton Jibunoh. It's nice to have you on the set.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you because, I mean, we've just conversed on the side, but, you know, I'm also glad that finally we can get to read your biography from your own lenses for the first time. I wonder why you chose the title Hunger for Power and why it took you 80 years to come out with this book.
Well, I wanted to have sufficient stories to tell because up till this very moment, but for the various insurgencies that are taking place around the continent, I had wanted to have one more expedition across the Sahara. In fact, I thought I was going to do that for my 80th birthday.
Your family should have changed you.
Well, apart from the family, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs wouldn't give me the usual support because of the security situation, not just in Nigeria, but across the entire continent.
What I find interesting, you've written 3 books before. The first one was Alone Across the Sub-Saharan Desert in the late 60s, after your first trip across the desert. Then you were traveling from London to Lagos.
Yes.
The second one was Me, My Desert and I,
Yes.
which was your effort, you say, to cause some kind of mitigation.
That's right.
After your second trip
Yes.
at 62.
Yes.
Then the third one was Bridging the Sahara.
Sahara.
Now, I find it interesting that Sahara became such a fascination. A young man, 28, studied, worked a little bit in the UK. You want to come home and you're thinking of crossing the desert?
Yes. Well, it was the era of the space race. If you recall, the race to the moon,
Actually,
the race
it was
to the
60s.
space, started in the 60s. And I remember that very famous John F. Kennedy's speech that we try the difficulties not because they are easy, but because they are hard. When he was defending the budgets that he needed to be able to continue the exploration, that touched me, and I followed the whole, being in the science as well, I followed the whole story about, you know, how can one be building a rocket with solid fuel and to fire this rocket into the space, traveling millions of miles without, you know, those things captured my whole life. And I continued to follow the story. So having been part of that era, I said, no, I cannot go back to Nigeria.
That concludes something.
Being, you know, saying, look, I have been part of this era. And that was how the whole idea came to me, that, look, if I cannot go to the space and I cannot be part, because if I had my way, I would have become part
You
of it.
did try, for what's sake.
Well, first of all, my line of study was not, they needed somebody in aeronautic. And I was too far away from aeronautic engineering. So that made it almost impossible for me. But then I said, look, if I carry out my own expedition, maybe somewhere down the line, somebody will put aside that requisite qualification and say to me, look, you can come and join us. But of course, I was dreaming and living in the
So you wanted to make a point, you wanted to prove that you wanted to be the first to have done it. Do you think about your safety?
That's the interesting thing about expedition and adventures. You don't worry too much about your life. I'm sorry to say so, but that is true. Other explorers will tell you that if you go on an expedition, you do it with a 50-50. You must be ready to die. Let me put it straight. You have to be ready to die because go back to history. The earlier explorers, most of them, they didn't survive. Only very few of them survived. But you see, it's what they now leave behind, the kind of message they are able to convey, especially to those following them, to those that will go and say, why was he doing this? What are the benefits? So those are the things that goes, and I haven't read a lot about explorers. Those were the things I found that I had in me naturally.
So you are an inborn explorer, naturally born,
yes.
And you have lived to be 80. Maybe we're not exploratory enough. I'll take a break and I'll return to talk a little bit more about how his family managed to cope with a man like this for over 60 years, I don't know. I'll be right back. So I am still in the studio with, I call him the desert man. And green is your favorite color.
Yes.
That's because it's nature, I suppose, right? So
Yes.
you always wear green.
Oh, yes.
As much as possible. You went once, twice, then the third time, you even wanted to go again at 80. So, what is this wonderland? How has your family coped? I mean, you're married with all your kids, your grandfather many times over. How did they cope with all of that?
In some cases, they go into denial. Fortunately for me, I was in it before they all came into the world.
Even your wife?
Even my wife, yes. So they married me, or she married me, knowing fully well that this is who,
Yeah, a little crazy.
It's like, if you recall, in the book of Nelson Mandela, when Winnie Mandela went to her father to tell him that she was going to marry Nelson Mandela. And the father said to her, you are marrying a struggle, not a human being.
So your wife married an expedition.
So they knew the kind of person, and even when they tried a few times to, not to stop me, but to talk me out of it, they found that, my life was never going to be the same again. And so rather than doing that, they collaborated and became, part of the whole expedition.
Before people think that's what was your way of, you practiced your profession as an engineer, you did all of those things, you were with Costain for years, and all of, so you were paying the bills.
That's right, yes.
Is it a case of because you chop belly full, that's why you could think of being an explorer?
On the contrary, the exploration is something to do with your nature. And you can't believe it. My first, second, and third expedition, I had to move around a lot to find the money, to find sponsors. And yes, in most cases, I went without a number of things or had to dispose something to be able to go on an expedition. So it's nothing to do with being, exploration is a very wonderful innovation in anybody's life because you are doing the impossible.
Now, tell me, I want to swing this back to, for example, the future for our country, Nigeria. In what ways do we earn the kind of leadership that we have by having a mindset like this?
Well, I wish I could take all those prospective leaders with me to the desert because they need it. To be quite honest with you, the way...
Maybe we should make it a leadership condition.
Again, it's something I touched on in my book, yes. When I talked about power, you know, power is not just, which again, I'm happy that at 80, because if not, people would have interpreted.
Do you think that maybe you want, to be
but
president?
Power is not just political power. It's not just money power. Because here in our country, you will look for money to buy power, or you get power to make money. But that's not what power is. So I think I want to use that, not just this book, but my appearance, especially on a program like this, to explain to Nigerians what power, you know, I was fascinated growing up watching Batman, watching Spider, watching Superman. It took me a long time to find out that all those things were fantasies. But
what we call witchcraft here.
That's right. Yeah. But you see, the fact that, you know, Superman can arrive at a scene and then save those that are being, you know, victimized upon, or those that are being discriminated against and things like that. So it is so much to do with that power within you and how, if you get it, how do you apply it? What do you do with it? Mm-hmm. I stated in my book that I know of incidents where people have gone from power to prison and from prison to power. Again, we have it in this country.
Yeah, absolutely.
So power is a very... when I went into the whole subject of power, I was so fascinated because it is a very, very intriguing.
So there'll be a lot to learn from that book.
Oh, yes.
But I just wonder, though, in writing all the books that you wrote, let's start from the first, the second, to the third, they had different motivations.
That's right.
The first one?
The first one was to tell my story, let the country, let Nigeria know that, look, you have in you somebody that can pick up a car in London and drive all the way across 13 countries, across the Mediterranean, across Sahara to Nigeria. I just wanted to let, because you see, you appear on a program, you get interviewed, people will say to you, because then it wasn't my intention to write any book, but people kept saying, look, you have to write your story. And I needed to write the story.
So
I
did that.
First one.
So the second one, Me, My Desert and I?
Me, My Desert and I was mainly because at that time, the whole issue of climate change, global warming, became a very topical issue all over the world.
Yeah.
And I, you know, listening to scientists talk about global warming, especially those that were making their statements based on science. But I experienced global warming in the deserts.
So 30-something years after, you still went back. I have to be part of
this debate.
Yes.
Because I went through it physically.
Yeah, you experienced
it. I saw it. I conquered it. So I became part of the debate. And in becoming part of the debate, the climate change debate, 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Of course, especially appearing at international forums, people again said, look, you have to write.
So you know,
because you have a unique position, and I wrote the second one. Then the third one.
That's the solution. What was the solution you preferred?
That is preferring a solution on how best to bridge.
Was this the one you went to research Israel for?
That's right. So I had to go back to the University of Ben-Gurion University in Israel.
At 70.
To research into the science of desertification. And that was also very revealing because it helped in, you know, people have forgotten that Kwame Nkrumah in April 1964, here in Lagos, invited by Tafawa Balewa, said that Africa will remain in darkness until the Sahara Desert is breached. In 1964. So, and that is where our darkness is coming from.
Is anybody listening to you, though?
Oh, but you have to, that's one thing about advocacy. You have to keep trying. You have to keep talking, and then you have to keep writing. Because even when you're gone, those
body of work
body of works will
speak for you.
Will speak for you.
In life, what are you most grateful for, sir, out of all of this? In life, what are you most grateful for?
Nature.
Apart from the fact that you grew...
Nature.
Nature.
Nature has done so much for me. And I mean, right from, I would have said the family, but nature was there before the family.
And nature gave you family.
Nature gave me family, yes.
So I want to thank you very much. How is the museum doing? Because that was in honor of your sister who also died early in life.
It's doing very well. It's now standing on its own, unlike when I had to go around looking for how to fund it, but now...
So you have no regrets?
No.
At all?
No.
How could you, when you could cross the desert 3 times, no matter how old you are? No regrets?
I have always... I managed to turn my regrets into... sometimes I joke about them, and people know me.
So that's one tip we must take from you.
Right.
Don't dwell on your regrets.
Oh, yes, just look ahead. Keep looking ahead, yes.
Thank you very much for being with us. And thank you for watching. And I think we should tell everybody Happy New Year.
Happy New Year,
everybody. I'll see you again next week on the show. Thank you. Find the book, if you can, and read it.